Greetings, allies. It is Monday, July 22nd, 2019. Here's your very, very brief Cup of Jones. If you have not been tuning in lately, I'm on paternity leave, so I'm doing very, very short versions of Cup of Jones, where all of the meat of Cup of Jones is in the text post. So below us on Patreon, you will see all of the questions asked to us last week, and along with specifically 3 questions that I actually asked all of you. Why do you watch Cup of Jones? What would you like to have changed about Cup of Jones? Got some great responses from that. That was a question inspired by one of our lovely patrons, and I got some great responses. Those actually popped up as questions in the feed today. 2 things that I'm going to take away from the comments from last week, suggestions about how to do the new format. One, speaking of takeaways, is to include takeaways in this short, brief video. I'll do that at the very end. There are only 2 small takeaways from this episode. And also to maybe consider taking one question and expounding a little bit more live, adding just a little bit more time onto the quick stream to talk about something very specifically that either brought up an interesting point or something that I want to elaborate on. I'm actually going to talk today about something that Bloodworth said in the last podcast, but we'll get to that right at the end. Lots of congratulations on Milo coming home, and a lot of people accepting the new format and accepting the change coming to Cup of Jones. Appreciate that. Blood is in chat today. Making sure I say everything correctly, and has been adding also his comments here and there to the text. So if you read the text below, so if you're listening to the audio version of this, or if you missed last week, new format for Cup of Jones for the foreseeable future, probably for about at least 2 more weeks, and then you will get the update from me on when things will go back to the way they typically were with Cup of Jones. Might go back to a regular Cup of Jones here at the desk. I might move back in the garage. Not quite sure yet. Tomorrow night, we are streaming Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, a game that I'm trying to steal myself away from Dragon Quest Builders 2 and make some time for, but I'm very excited for Ultimate Alliance 3. Playing that together as a group tomorrow, Mr. Kyle Bossman put together a survey for our patrons, which we've talked about previously on Cup of Jones, the idea of having our patrons directly weigh in on some very important questions that are going to influence the future of the company. And we all weighed in on how we thought that survey should be structured. But that is, big kudos to Kyle Bossman for finally putting that together. And there have been about 1,000 responses to that survey so far. It'll take a while to process it. It'll obviously take even longer for maybe some of the suggestions or some of the the best ideas or some of the squeakiest wheels, if you will, that are exposed from this survey. But it also kind of speaks to what Blood will say in a direct quote from the podcast in a bit. Kind of where we are in terms of this is a perfect time to weigh in with all of the allies and how happy they are with what they're working on, weigh in with our community on any changes that they would like to see coming to our Patreon, and then really using this opportunity now that we are comfortably in the studio past E3, and the summer is a general slow time anyway, to kind of reassess the company and kind of maybe make some big changes to the Patreon, some big changes to our content output, big changes just to the business all around. So, which I'm excited to do and excited to talk about in just a second. We put up a preview for Fire Emblem last week that's done incredibly well. Ben is currently working on the review. We will have the review for Fire Emblem 3 Houses up as soon as possible this week. And Easy Livin' is this week. Easy Livin' begins this Friday. I will not be at Easy Livin'. I might jump online in some way. I might be a part of some, from a distance, might be a part of Easy Livin' in some way, but I will not be there in person. But it is still a very fun time for those of you that do not know about Easy Livin'. It's a 50-hour live stream from a beach house here in California, where, and now the laundry's beeping. I'm gonna go get the laundry. Hold on 2 seconds. Just so it's not beeping the whole episode, And it's a short episode. It is not short enough. But yeah, Easy Living begins this Friday at noon Pacific time from a beach house, and I will be watching it from the comfort of my own home, much like all of you. Really quickly, I was surprised because I want to tell you a very quick story about last Tuesday. I am still doing Cup of Jones. I'm still doing voiceover for our previews and reviews and stuff. And I am still cutting the podcast. And one of the reasons I'm still kind of the podcast is just out of comfort. It's just something I've done for a really long time. One of the other reasons is I kind of want to stay in tune with the podcast. It is a show that I'm on every episode of. It is a show where the inside jokes can get a little out of hand sometimes, and so I want to be sure that I am, up to date on what people have said. We're going through predictions right now. In this last episode, that was very fun. Reviewing predictions that we had made, several months ago, and predictions we are making about the next 6 months to a year. And so it was interesting hearing those predictions. And so when those come up again in 6 months to a year, I'll be like, I remember that episode. I wasn't here, but I remember that episode because I watched it. I edited that episode, and so I go to the office to grab the cards to cut that episode, and Ben and Ian and Kyle and Bloodworth were in the parking lot, and they were just getting ready to leave, and I stroll up all creepy in my car. I'm like, oh, hey, guys, I didn't think you were going to be here. And we ended up talking in the parking lot for like 20 minutes. And it was great because I can clearly tell that there's this attitude among, all of the allies that they are ready for big changes to happen to the Patreon. I mean, part of this is because, we've kind of been surfing around the 50K mark for a while, dipping above, jumping up above it and then dipping below it, depending on our biggest sponsors, that'll sometimes come and go as we change from one month to the next. And so, but mostly it just seems like a really good time to kind of reevaluate everything. And it's tough to do that in a 9-person team because you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You have a lot of people with different opinions about things. And you have a lot of people that are attached to the things that they're working on. So they're either attached to a project or attached to, being involved in reviews or live events or, various shows that they're doing. And obviously all that stuff takes up a lot of time. And so we spend most of our time delivering all the content that we promised. And so it doesn't really leave us a lot of time to not only think about ways that we can evolve the format, but meet together collectively and make decisions on those that we all feel comfortable with. And we feel comfortable with the business moving forward. A cup of laundry. Thanks, Blood. And a cup of detergent. And so we had this really great open conversation about, again, it was just, 5 of the 9 allies, and we weren't like finalizing anything, but it was very clear to me that we are getting close to a period of allies being willing to bring in some crazy new things, maybe let some things go, and basically take this opportunity to make some big changes to the Patreon. Again, we don't have a schedule on when that stuff is going to happen. We are going to be having a meeting before July is out where we're going to discuss, obviously the month of August, but also just kind of where we're at business-wise in terms of all these ideas that have been floated around from people. And I was like, when would be a good time to maybe start suggesting that? I don't know if that's a random thing just to throw out on an episode of Cup of Jones. And at the end of the podcast, this last podcast, Blood framed it really well. And so I want you all to listen to Daniel Bloodworth just for a moment on where he thinks we currently stand on patreon.com/easyallies. Take it away, Bloodworth.
Are we good?
Well, I did want to just kind of put it out there a little bit, like, we're starting to have internal conversations and stuff about like what's next for the Patreon, because we're kind of in this transitional period, I think, because I think like the past 3 years until we got into this space has really just been about like, the comeback story, and
yes.
And I think there's a lot of people that were like really pushing for that, and I think what we've seen is now that like it's happened, there's just sort of this sense where like people don't like have to like, we don't have to push so much, and like they're relaxing, they're coming down from higher tiers, and so there's almost kind of this hard to comprehend thing of we're getting more people and we're getting less dollars, but it's because people are coming in and like lowering pledges because we've done it, we've made it, everyone's back together.
Yeah. Mission accomplished. We're good.
But
we're good to pack up and go home.
But that's the thing. Like we're still here. We're still going. And everybody watching this podcast, owes it to those people that like really, put in the effort and went above and beyond in many cases. People giving $25 a month for 3 years or $60 a month or whatever. And so I would just, encourage you to think about that. Like people are definitely doing it so that if you can't afford it, you can watch it. But if it's something that's valuable to you, and if any of the stuff that we make is valuable to you, then consider coming in at that $1 or $5 level, and making it something that can continue to be sustainable over a long term.
Yeah. But as you open with Blood, I do think on our end, it's kind of like, okay, we're here, now what? You know what I mean? We did achieve a goal, and it's like we need to determine what our next goal is and everything like that. And so, yeah, we got a little bit of work to do on our end, I think, of like, what do we changing? What are we making this into? What are we like? We have a studio right now. I can pound on this desk that's hard.
Right.
Do you know how weird that is? Like, this is a desk we paid for. It's weird.
So I love that. And of course, Bossman weighs in with a little Bossman quote at the end there. So yeah, in my mind, and something that I'm communicating before on Cup of Jones, that again is just me talking, is kind of what is that next big 60K goal. Blood weighs in where he's like, that might not be what we need. We don't necessarily need another big push, another kind of desperate plea that, to have the feeling that Easy Allies is, and here comes the sun, that Easy Allies is somehow incomplete without us getting to that goal. We want goals to be something exciting, but we obviously want us to, be okay without them, that we will just improve if we move on to those goals. And so it's a tricky thing to kind of reevaluate, our collective interests following, this big move to the studio. And I think just beyond having those good ideas, beyond having the time to implement those things, having the know-how to produce the type of content that we want to produce, I think we have to be, careful about everyone's opinions, about all of the other allies, their interests, to make sure that they are still in the company that they want to be in. They're still doing the jobs that they want to do. And so we're trying to figure that out. And we will communicate that more as we move forward. And there's a lot of fun stuff planned for the end of this year. Obviously, Easy Living is the big thing this week. And apologies that I won't be there. But our big takeaways, again, this might seem strange because I did not read these questions. But if you want to check out these questions, you can check them below. Our two big takeaways, one from Jesse Blue, who asked about podcast mini sponsors, which is an interesting idea. And like I said, we're thinking about obviously shaking up everything at Easy Allies that includes sponsorship. And so I will throw that to the rest of the team and see what they think. Kerbu also talked about getting a small studio tablet or ultralight notebook for the stage, but more specifically giving the people on the desk the power to change stuff on the control room, change stuff in the streaming room stage, basically, have all of the functionality that somebody would have on the control room stage, but on the desk. I'm not a huge fan of that because I don't want the person hosting anything to just have too much to do. I want them to focus more on the actual hosting part of it. Maybe that's a co-hosting duty. But, again, just food for thought. We all have laptops anyway. That might not be something that we have to buy. Like, I have a laptop, Blood has a laptop. That's something we could bring in if we really, really wanted to do that. But it does bring up the possibilities of, having somebody at the desk capable of doing that. And it also speaks to an interest that we have in streamlining that process. Again, we were talking about the monitors in the back, how those just kind of loop logos now. Obviously, we want to increase the functionality of what those monitors do in the back. But so those two questions kind of speak to stuff that we're also working on. And those are your takeaways. And our editorial today was provided by Mr. Daniel Bloodworth. Okay, this got weird. Bloodworth somehow ended up 45 seconds behind the live feed. I'm going to let him figure that out. He will watch the last 45 seconds of this show after all of you. I basically just echo the same thing that Bloodworth said, where I view this not only as, how tiers can change, reward tiers can change, goal tiers can change, but just kind of the general attitude about Easy Allies in terms of where are we going? What is the next thing to be excited about? What does the future of this company look like? I have ideas and I have things that I know will happen for the end of the year, but in the coming meetings, in the time that we take in the months of July and August and September moving forward to collectively meet as a group, which is tough for me to do on paternity leave, figure out, the answers to a lot of these questions, kind of where everybody's attitudes are currently resting and what we're willing to do, what changes we are willing to make to this Patreon to obviously not, get us incentivized to stay healthily above 50K on the Patreon, but where are we going moving forward? So thank you, Daniel Bloodworth, for phrasing that very well on the Easy Allies podcast. Thank you to all of you for being very patient with me on this new version of Cup of Jones. Keep the suggestions coming on ways to streamline this format. Again, the majority of the questions, the bulk of Cup of Jones is in the comments below. So go and read those comments and questions and send more to me next week, and I will answer them and jump online very quickly for a very brief live Cup of Jones. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Enjoy Easy Living. I will see you online. Cheers.